For a TV, the world is thinking.
Capitalism has strengthened the part of our brains that are consumers and investors. Supercapitalism has made us terrifically adept at thinking of ourselves and practicing being very, very efficient and adept consumers and investors. But our democracy, in light of that, has not kept up. It has not allowed us to be practicing citizens. In fact, the habits and practices of citizenship have been undermined along the way. Yes, Washington is awash with corporate lobbyists, but what are those lobbyists actually doing? Most of those lobbyists are there in Washington to get a competitive advantage over their competitors who are also in Washington trying to use public policies to get a competitive advantage over their competitors. It's an arms race. Google, before 2004 when it went public, was not in Washington. Google had no presence in Washington. It goes public, and then Google hires a whole platoon of Washington lobbyists and public relations people in Washington. Why? Because Google's major competitors, now that Google is a public corporation, Google's major competitors are Yahoo and Microsoft and others, and they're already in Washington. And every time an issue of trade or antitrust or intellectual property, or anything else comes out that might affect the competitive position of any of these companies relative to one another, Google has to be there, it feels, and its lobbyists have to be there. Most of what happens in Washington, and most of what these lobbyists do, and most of what the congressional staffs do, and much of the time of individual members of Congress is spent on intra-industry or inter-industry battles. The noise level is so high that the public, you and I, cannot be heard. At least the citizen in us cannot be heard. The consumer and investor in us is the only voice that is being heard. I have a very tiny sliver of Microsoft stock, so tiny you can't even see it. It doesn't even show up as a rounding error. But I can tell you, when I discovered that Microsoft was using my money, as a Microsoft shareholder, my money to try to lobby to get the appropriation for the Justice Department's antitrust division lowered so that the antitrust division would not be able to prosecute Microsoft in the antitrust case that it obviously did try to pursue. I, as an investor, was better off to the extent that Microsoft was successful. But I, as a citizen, was potentially worse off. And the citizen side of my brain, just like the citizen side of your brains, is often at war with the consumer investor side of our brains.